COVID-19 has made Georgia poorer. This is what every recent figure for the pandemic 2020 tells us. Average monthly income, for example, decreased by 6.4% per household and by 4.4% per capita, amounting to 1,100 lari and 321 lari correspondingly, show preliminary data from the Statistics Office of Georgia, Geostat. At first sight, the main component that could be driving the increase in monthly income going forward seem to be remittances. In the first 4 months of 2021, remittances to Georgia increased by 48%. That's roughly around 225 million USD compared to 2020, reaching a record 693 million USD. This year, the largest remittances, 194 million USD, came in April, up 145% from April 2020. According to the World Bank, by the way, Georgia ranks 21st in the world in terms of dependency on remittances. Almost 13% of the country's economy is generated by remittances sent by Georgian citizens working abroad. Without these funds, the size of the country's local demand would have been much smaller. Not only remittances are growing. Look at the first quarter of 2021. In 4 months of 2021, exports increased by almost 20% year on year to USD 1.2 billion, and imports increased by around 10% year on year to USD 2.7 billion. As a result, the trade deficit was up by almost 4% year on year to USD around 1.5 billion. This trend of trade recovery is a global trend. World trade's recovery from the COVID-19 crisis hit a record high in the first quarter of 2021, increasing by 10% year over year and 4% quarter over quarter, according to UNCTAD's Global Trade Update. This means it took 4 quarters after the start of the pandemic-induced recessions for world trade to return to pre-recession levels. Although in first quarter of 2021, the value of trade in goods was higher than the pre-pandemic level, trade in services remains substantially below averages. This is something to keep in mind while talking of Georgia's economic recovery, where tourism and services have a substantial share. In April, Georgia received a total of 82,519 international visitors, which is an increase of 140% compared to 2020, and the amount of money spent by these visitors was estimated at record around 50 million USD since the beginning of the pandemic, up by 487% compared to April 2020. Numbers look promising, but we should not forget that the basis point last year was so low, the change now seems sufficient. However, when compared to 2019 levels, it becomes clear that if the vaccination pace does not pick up, then Georgia is set to lose at least 2 or even 3 years of its development. So far, the expectations of 3 main IFIs in Georgia, World Bank, IMF and ADB, which I have been interviewing very intensively these past several weeks, seem optimistic in that first, all of them agree that times are very difficult and it's not easy for Georgia. Second, all of them believe the recovery period is going to be an opportunity to rethink the type of growth that we see in Georgia insofar that it is widely benefiting a wider population of the country and making Georgia a more robust, more resilient economy in the face of the future shocks. And last but not the least, as they see it, if Georgia manages to come out of this crisis with still a healthy financial system, with adequate foreign exchange reserves despite a depreciated exchange rate and the slowdown in the activity, it won't still be a bad outcome. We will say, so far, so good. This is the phrase that I remembered from the interview with IMF Salim Chakir, and which to me sums up the IFI community attitude in general. Meanwhile, ILO says Georgia is among the top 10 countries, number 10 country in the world globally by unemployment. So my question is so far, so good enough?
Good enough never is. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, good enough never is. That's the main motto of our media, Business Media Georgia. We believe our platforms are highly demanded, both by the taxpayers which is actually the population of this country and business industries, those who suffer both from external and internal shocks. Unfortunately, media is not in a position to eliminate all the risks for businesses, but the feedback what our small team have from you, our dedicated followers and supporters of the business media in Georgia, makes my heart and mind full of enthusiasm with optimism that yes, yet again, ladies and gentlemen, we need to grow. We need to meet our most ambitious, unreachable KPIs as country as soon as we can. We need more growth and investments, which is impossible to reach if we do not begin implementing the most ambitious package of reforms. I mean economic and structural reforms to become once again the most prominent, attractive and advanced place for businesses in the region. By the way, performing our show at the checkpoints is another part of our internal ambitious plan to cover the regional business news. That's gonna happen quite shortly. So yes, for sure, good enough never is. And meanwhile, while Elena will join me back, the ceremony is about to begin. It's 30th of May and we're running the checkpoints news shortly.
Natia Turnava, Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development, discussed setting up a new tourism support program, matching fund, with the representatives of USAID, which aims to support tourism companies in Georgia. The Tourism Support Fund will enable micro, small and medium-sized enterprises to increase their business awareness on social networks such as Facebook, Instagram, and online advertising platforms such as Google Ads.
Gennady Arveladze, Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development, met with Giacomo Canera, he is CEO of Capital Tech, a large investment corporation in Peru. They expressed interest in starting a business in Georgia. In particular, they are interested in producing thermal paper, which is in demand both in Georgia and abroad.
Georgia's foreign direct investments stood at 136 million USD in Kazakhstan in 2020. TBC Capital published a report on Georgia-Kazakhstan enhancing economic partnership. According to the report, Georgia's FDI in Kazakhstan posted a record-breaking amount in 2020, exceeding the previous 15 years' average by almost 20 times.
The Georgian state electricity system estimates the potential of 20 solar and wind power plants. The construction of these stations is conditionally scheduled for the next 10 years. According to the state power system document, the total output of these power plants should be 1,257 megawatts. At present, is only one alternative energy power plant operating in Georgia, a 21 megawatt Gori wind farm, which was created by the state with a loan from the EBRD and was put into operation in December 2016.
The new advisor to the economy minister in the field of tourism, Valery Chekheria, explains the main directions of his activities. He considers attracting high-income tourists and consequently new markets will be a priority. According to Chekheria, the Coordination Council took the decision to open indoor spaces at the restaurants on weekends due to the increasing tourist number. Let's count how many tourists we will have at the end of the year. We do not have the ambition to return to the pre-pandemic levels, but we have a very good start due to the geographical location. Arab countries are interested, and we have already noticed travelers from these countries in the streets of Batumi, Valery Chekheria said. I'm back in my place, Georgi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. In the headlines, we just showcased Valery Chekheria, and I suggest to open up our program with an interview with Mariam Kruishvili, who used to chair the tourism administration in Georgia, which she left for the parliament. And after her becoming an MP, no one actually took her place to this day. This post is still vacant.
Yeah, agreed, Elena. This week, Mariam Kruishvili returned to the executive branch as the 7th deputy to the Minister of Economy, overseeing tourism aviation, both very responsible directions. Georgi Molodinashvili interviewed Mariam Krivishvili and her new vision for the new challenges in place due to COVID-19 for the checkpoints.
And before that, let's view Mariam Adamia's story. She practically gathered the voices of the whole community assessing Mariam Krivishvili's appointment.
Georgian National Tourism Administration, check. Georgian Civil Aviation Agency, check. Mountain Resorts Development Company, check.
It was recently announced that Mariam Krivishvili, MP, has been appointed Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia. She will lead the development of tourism, aviation, and resorts. That is, when we have separate agencies in the country with a team in the head. This doesn't refer to the National Tourism Administration, which in fact has been led by an acting head for 4 months. The appointment of the 7th Deputy Minister of Economy raised some concerns. It should be noted that according to the assessment of the private sector, despite many deputies and the PR, the agency's communication is still not good.
Personally, I have no complaints with Mariam Krivishvili. On the contrary, I think her appointment will be beneficial for communication. At least someone will give us an answer. But in these conditions, when the Minister of Economy already has a lot of deputies, when several agencies work in this direction, and when the country is in crisis, it is a bit unclear what it serves to add a new deputy. If optimization had taken place, any agency had been abolished and the post of deputy minister had been added, then this decision would have been understandable, but this did not happen.
We have many discussions about what it means to be a small country. We need a small government, cost optimization, especially in terms of crisis. However, every day we get the opposite. New deputies are appointed, new agencies and ministries are created, and in the end, it seems that nothing improves.
These agencies should not be cluttered and should not have different agendas. No need to spend more money. It is necessary to optimize costs and join forces. If all this is put under one umbrella, it will be a good decision. It will be good if they no longer have 3 marketing persons or 3 accounting departments. We must have a common action plan. Communication with the private sector must be of high quality. Only in this case, the appointment of Krivishvili is justified. Tourism and aviation do not work differently in any other country.
We're talking about creating a unified, clear, and sustainable policy. We're talking about joining forces, establishing a strategy, and fulfilling it. Only then is it justified to appoint Mariam Krivishvili to a new position. Otherwise, as the private sector says, her functions remain unclear. This is also because neither the media nor the private sector has further information on the matter. It is also clear that one of the priority sectors in the country, tourism, needs help, support, and effective management. Tourism needs more attention, and the appointment of Mariam Krivishvili, who has extensive experience in the area, is a good decision, only if she can take effective steps. It should also be noted that Krivishvili has several right decisions on her record, be it in terms of introducing new airlines or diversifying the tourism markets. So the questions raised do not necessarily refer to Krivishvili herself, but the new position she will acquire.
To this day, we do not have an appointed head of the National Tourism Administration. There are many unresolved issues in aviation too. I think unifying these directions and solving these issues with the economic team will be her primary role. It must also be said that communication with Mariam was persistent when she was the head of the National Tourism Administration, which we cannot say about the current situation. We need more work to boost tourism in the country. The challenges facing the tourism sector today need to be properly addressed in order for the economy to grow rapidly and for tourists to enter the country. Krivishvili has experience in this regard and will therefore try to implement the plan in the interests of small and medium businesses. Therefore, I think this was a good decision.
Before being appointed Deputy Minister of Economy, Krivishvili was an MP and the first Deputy Chairwoman of the Committee on European Integration, as well as member of the Committee on Sectoral Economics and Economic Policy. In 2019-2020, Krivishvili headed the National Tourism Administration of the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development. She held the position of Deputy Head of the same administration in 2012-2014. In 2014-2019, she was the General Director of the tour operator Voyager and the Regional Manager of the airline Fly Dubai.
Mariam, first of all, thank you for joining us, and it's a really pleasure to host you in our program, and thank you for your time.
George, thank you very much for the invitation, and I greet you and I greet our viewers.
Thank you. Despite the fact that you've been working in the aviation and in tourism sectors, this new capacity that you've been recently appointed gives you new possibilities and at the same time gives you new responsibility. Just please tell us and tell to our viewers and our audience, what is your vision with respect to the sectors that you'll be coordinating in this new capacity?
I think today is the day when being posted on this position is of highest importance, and it is a very big responsibility due to the fact that we are now in the position to start slowly and safely reviving our aviation and tourism industries. I really need to highlight that I'm very grateful towards our Prime Minister who chose me over this position, who decided that it was a very good idea to combine tourism, aviation, as well as mountain resorts under one umbrella. And as you rightly know, these sectors are extremely interconnected, and it is crucially important that these two directions evolve together and develop together in a very extreme coordinated way. My vision number one when it comes to short-term strategy and short-term KPIs to call so would be fast revival of the figures and the conditions that we had prior COVID-19. It's a very big goal, actually, to be very honest. It's something that we were so proud to achieve back in 2019, both in tourism as well as aviation. We had vast amount of airlines flying into our country. We had hundreds of routes and destinations that we were so happy to launch direct flights. And of course, number of travelers that was increasing year by year. And by 2019, we are restarting actually from scratch. We are restarting from the scratch. However, we can say that dynamics are quite promising and quite positive. As you know, currently when it comes to aviation, we already have up to 55% of what we've had back in 2019. This is an extremely positive.
Let me be more precise in this on this topic. Despite the prediction and the thoughts, particularly coming from the international organization, aviation started to emerge from this crisis faster than it was predicted. And even Eurocontrol has changed their outlook towards Georgian aviation market. But let me ask you, what specifically needs to be done to stimulate this sector, particularly aviation sector and tourism? Of course, they are absolutely together in this battle. And what kind of mechanism could be created to increase the passenger traffic in the country?
Number one would be ease of immigration regulations. Clear guidelines that I think we already have in place, and we've all been a witness of a positive feedback that we've obtained once the immigration regulations was altered. I mean that all the country nationals who are fully vaccinated can come to Georgia without any whatsoever regulations, or if we're talking about 50 countries, if a resident or the national of any of this 50 country has not yet been vaccinated, can come to Georgia with a valid PCR test and get tested on the third day once being in the country. That was the trigger point where Georgia came out in the picture and says that you can come to Georgia, it's safe, but you also need to come with either of these options. This gave a very big confidence to airlines because, as you know, aviation industry has been hit dramatically during COVID-19. So obviously it's realistic that airlines are being pessimistic and are being more thoughtful when it comes to opening or going back to traditional directions. So this was sort of a guarantee for an airline to launch direct flights to Georgia, as there was no whatsoever hassle related to traveling to Georgia. We've seen that airlines started with weekly 1, then increased flight frequencies to weekly 2, then weekly 3, and there are some directions. For instance, I recall now Saudi Arabia, and from the moment direct flights were launched, airline decided to go big, and we currently have 23 flights per week. So I think rule number 1 from our side would be a very close cooperation with all airlines, listening to their needs. We have same goals. We need more traffic, we need more direct flights, and we need more passengers on their aircrafts, because more passengers on their aircrafts means more tourists coming into Georgia. And I believe that we have some space left where we should listen to airlines or private sector representatives and decide what are the tools and instruments that government has in order to activate it and to motivate more airlines to start and to come back on Georgian market with direct flights.
Absolutely. In this very difficult situation, it's crucial for particular big players from the Middle East and from Europe to see joint efforts of private as well as public sector, and I'm glad that you are sending this message to the sector globally.
Well, Georgi, there was a time when tourism was the main driver of Georgia's economic growth. Now it seems remittances outperform this sector, and as the World Bank statistics show very clearly, the share of remittances is highest in low-income countries.
Yes, Elena, correct. You have already mentioned in your note at the beginning of the checkpoints, World Bank's 2019 data says that Georgia ranks 21st in the world in terms of remittance dependency. We asked our reporter, Tatia Kakiashvili, to explain the trend of growing remittances even during the pandemic.
According to the World Bank's 2019 data, Georgia ranks 21st place in the world in terms of remittances. It turns out that 12.92% of the country's economy is generated by remittances sent by Georgian citizens working abroad. World Bank statistics are based on 2019 data. At that time, Georgia received $1.73 billion in remittances. As Eva Bojorishvili, the head of Galton Taggart Research Department, says, this ranking is not surprising because for years, remittances have presented significant social and economic implications for Georgia.
Inflows of remittances are one of the major sources of foreign currency inflows for the country, and overall it also shows that with little employment opportunity in the country, Georgian workers seek employment overseas. This international migration is domestic labor market pressures because, as you know, Georgia has large pool of unskilled labor force, and there is like big skills mismatch in the country.
Eva Bojorishvili tells us several reasons to explain this growth of remittances even during the pandemic year.
One of the reasons is that Georgia is less dependent on Russia because in previous years Russia accounted for more than half of Georgian remittances, and Russia's share decreased to below 20% in 2020. This is one of the reasons, because remittances from Russia decreased in 2020, but overall there was growth of remittances because remittances increased from other countries. Another reason is that significant fiscal stimulus in host countries helped Georgian workers to retain their works. The third reason is that there was shift from cash to digital channels from informal to formal channels, and this is one of the reasons for growing remittances overall, not in Georgia also, but in global.
Otor Nadaraya, chief economist of TBC Capital, supports this idea and adds that from one perspective this is positive. However, he also highlights some challenges.
This is, of course, somewhat natural for all low-income emerging economies. Well, maybe not for all of them, but for many of them. And of course, the problem is that population is leaving the country, and we still are not, let's say, the country where Georgians stay and also foreigners come. And basically, In the long run, of course, you may argue that more successful countries, of course, are themselves remitting countries rather than receiving remittances. Yes. So basically, we can argue there is certainly positive, but also negative.
World Bank statistics show that the share of remittances is highest in low-income countries. Tonga is in the first place with 37% of its GDP being filled by remittances. Tajikistan ranks the second with 28.6% of GDP. Its significant part of the population is employed in Russia and other CIS countries. Like Georgia, Ukraine and Armenia depend on more than 10% of their economy for remittances. Here is the full ranking. Tonga, Tajikistan, Congo's Republic, Nepal, Haiti, Honduras, El Salvador, Lesotho, Bermuda Islands, Samoa, Yemen, Moldova, Kosovo, Jamaica, Gambia, Uzbekistan, Comoros, Lebanon, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Georgia, Cape Verde, Liberia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Armenia, Senegal, Montenegro, Ukraine, Kiribati, and Jordan. This year, Georgia received the largest remittances of $194 million in April, which was 145% more than in April 2020.
Well, Georgi, what could really grow Georgia's economy is its energy sector with the potential in renewables, especially in hydropower, which is estimated to have quite an untapped potential since to this day only 20% of it is utilized.
And which has quite a hardship moving forward due to public protests and questions with some major or minor power plants on hold as estimated for 4 billion in, let's say, frozen investments.
Very true, Georgi. On the background of Namakhvani protest, which is considered to be the longest standing protest against the foreign investment in this sector, I interviewed Mariam Chakhvashvili, Galton Taggart's analyst and expert of a leading investment bank, about whether or not Georgia still has chances to become an energy hub as envisioned before. Mariam, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking our questions. Mariam, does Georgia still have the potential to be become an energy hub?
Probably it will be difficult considering the current situation of investments and the environment in the energy sector in overall. You know that we are currently changing Georgian legislation. We are in the process of the reforms, which by this Georgia is a leader in the region, if we do not count Turkey, because Armenia and Azerbaijan does not have this energy market model to which we are moving from 2022. So in this regards, we are advanced to be compared to them. But if we talk regarding the energy projects, we have some difficulties in this regard. We know that we have some protests from local population. Additionally, this reform process made decisions of investors delayed in last 2 or 3 years. So if we look at the trend of last couple of years, we can see that investors had tendency to delay their decisions regarding the construction of power plants. First of all, because of this reform process, they wanted to have the clear picture of the future market. And later, this protest from local population is ended, which also delays their decision to go into this construction phase of the projects. So in overall, we can say that investors have lots of questions and lots of risks before they make the decision to move to the construction phase of the project.
We can see this in delayed projects, as you mentioned, which is evaluated to around like 4 billion in investments, and also we see FDI figures which are also consistently decreasing over these years.
In a couple of years ago, this energy sector was a leader in terms of FDI for a couple of last years. So the sector is nothing but the numbers have been decreasing, and this is due to these delays, as mentioned, not only because of the local population, but also there are delays in decisions regarding this reform process. And overall, if we want to say whether Georgia can become a hub of energy projects, it will be hard because of these delays of decisions and these delays of the energy projects. So because of these delays, we have the trend that electricity consumption is growing with much higher pace rather than generation. For example, for the last 5 years, on average, electricity consumption growth was 5%, while generation was growing at 3.3%. So this leg of this growing trend created increased needs of electricity imports. So we are becoming more of import-dependent country rather than export-dependent. So the last year we were exporting electricity was 2010. From that year, we are importing more and more electricity, and not only electricity but also natural gas to make the thermal power plants work in Georgia. So the thermal power plants were also commissioned over the last 5 years. 2 thermal power plants were commissioned in Georgia. Originally, they were supposed to be a replacement for the old thermal power plants, but because the demand is increasing with that high pace, we had to maintain old power plants and use these new power plants as a source for demand satisfaction. So overall, in the electricity sector, we are increasingly depending on the import of electricity and import of natural gas. And with the investments, we also have delays. The only thing that we can say that we are more or less advanced is this reform process, which
approximates us
to the energy community's regulations. That there we still have some delays. Hopefully this year's tendency gives us hope that there will be no more delay in the reform process, because we are currently under this testing regime of these platforms. So hopefully 1st of January is the last date when this reform will be, or part of the reform will be postponed. And this will give us at least potential to raise some European-style investors. Maybe this will be a signal for them to come in Georgia and invest more in energy sector.
But you also mentioned the tough environment, investment environment, actually, to say that we have right now. And of course, Namakhwani project is just one illustration of how things get tougher when it comes to protests, right? So what would you say? How did we come to this boiling point, so to say?
It's not something started today or yesterday with this project. This protest from local population has started, has been on place for several years, and the protest is not only for large projects but also for some smaller projects. It's okay in European countries as well. It's not something new for European investors to have the protest from local population, but it should be managed, it should be reasonable, and it should be somehow compensated.
Do you think it is possible to find this trade-off in this specific situation? Because what the population demands from the government, unfortunately, is just to stop the project.
Ultimatums are never a good idea, but I'm optimist, and I hope that they can find a middle point where they can find a way to continue this project. Like some concerns regarding the studies, etc., might be considered, so that studies are revised, or some experts put their opinion on the paper. But these ultimatums of stopping the project, this precedent should not take place in Georgia. It will be a very bad signal for investors, not only for the energy sector, but also for any other sector.
One of the main concerns that population says that it has with this project is that is basically PPAs, so to say. Why is government guaranteeing so much to the investor without getting the same in return? This is the question that these people are posing, right? But we know that PPAs are not something that are specific for Namakhvani, for example, right? So what is the logic behind these PPAs, and what are some steps to have the opportunity to minimize these guarantees?
This is not a know-how of Georgian government. It is a well-appropriated method in European countries as well and worldwide. So PPA is used in every country for the strategically important projects. So this is the mechanism which gives investors potential to safeguard their investments, to be sure that they will get their returns back, expected returns back. And of course, when the country has high country risks or high market risks, then investor requests higher guarantees and more fixed kind of power purchase agreement. Another form of the promotional mechanism is the feed-in premium, to which European countries are moving now. So they are trying to abandon the PPAs and move more to the feed-in premium mechanism, which is tariff addition to the market price. Unfortunately, we do not have the market price in Georgia. We will have this market price once this new market model is commissioned and fully working, when the supply-demand gives us the market price, not the rules written in the government laws. Then it will be possible to move to this feed-in premium mechanism. Before that, we have to give the PPAs to any investor, not only foreign investor, but also to the Georgian investors, to give them possibility to predict their revenue.
What could be the way out of this situation to promote Georgia to the investors as, if not a hub, then a place where it's appealing to do business, which is also very important for us not to be import dependent in future?
We have untapped potential quite high of renewable energy, not only hydro but wind and solar as well. So we do have the potential. This means that some good projects are on the place. Good project means that they do not require a high PPA in order to be economically feasible. So first of all, we need to list all these projects and prepare the initial package of these projects to the investors. Secondly, of course, we need to list all the studies that projects should have. we need to make sure that official documents has weight in experts, in population, for everybody.
Could transparency help there? Because that's what we hear from these people, that the process hasn't been transparent yet, and now backwards when they are finding some kinds of documents like the draft document of recommendations from the Justice Ministry to the Ministry of Economy or Energy, whatever that was at that time, now these documents, these working papers seem really suspicious because they weren't transparent at the moment when we were interested in them.
One thing is making it available for public, but can public read these documents and understand them correctly in a way that they should have? So
we still come to the problem of lack of communication.
Maybe it's not best to put all the documents publicly, all working documents publicly, because when somebody reads a document, only one document, he might have out of context understanding of this document. So probably what should have been done is that the promotion, the narrative was explained from the beginning to the end. So what was the process that the project walked through? What was the process beginning from 90s to hundreds, and then who were the experts doing the documents, etc. So maybe this narrative is something that is lacking rather than just simple transparency.
Do we need HPPs?
Sure. That should not be a question. That should be something that is a must. We need to import it at a time when we are consuming it, so it's not a product that we can inventorize. Maybe in the electricity sector we need local production even more than in any other sector.
Do you think as a society we will come to that consensus, and when? Do we have to make a lot of mistakes to come to that?
I'm an optimistic person, and I hope that we will come to a consensus, we will come to further development, etc. So I'm not only an optimistic person, but an optimistic person working in the electricity sector. So I do hope that this sector will continue development in all its aspects.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, net technology is changing and whole sectors are changing with it as well. The hydropower sector, by the way, has also changed significantly, but right now we'll be focusing on a totally new scientific achievement, really revolution.
Yes, Georgi, a very exciting one too. The scientists have just created elements that might completely change the electric car industry. We are talking about a new type of lithium metal element created by the team of the Harvard University School of Engineering.
Lithium-ion batteries save much more energy and charge much faster than lithium-ion batteries now used in smartphones or electric vehicles. Tatia Kakiashvili will tell us more about this.
Having a large supply of durable and fast-charging elements in the world is essential for the development of the electric vehicle industry. However, today the number of lithium-ion batteries does not fully meet the demand of the industry, and in addition they are heavy, quite expensive, and require a lot of time to charge. Because of the current situation, researchers have solved a 40-year-old problem. They created elements that might completely change the electric car industry. We're talking about a new type of lithium metal element created by the team of the Harvard University School of Engineering. Lithium-ion batteries save much more energy and charge much faster than lithium-ion batteries now used in smartphones or electric vehicles. Obviously, a number of scientists have worked to solve this problem so far. However, the durability of such elements have been very weak and could not fully supply the industry. Dean of the Faculty of Transport Engineering of the Georgian Technical University, Otor Gelashvili positively assessed this news, and he said that the creation of a lithium metal element will help to establish more electric vehicles in our country. At the same time, Gelashvili focuses on the advantages of the new element compared to the traditional one.
A traditional battery operates on the principle of lead and sulfuric acid, and it could not provide the mileage of the vehicle. It is important that the mileage of the vehicle with a single charge of the battery would be a significant proportion. Researchers are already working to improve the battery life of the electric car. This is due to the fact that today, thanks to nanotechnologies, it has been ensured that a modern type of battery can be used.
Interestingly, the new generation batteries can be charged at least 10,000 times, which in turn will increase the viability of electric vehicles while reducing their charging time. This good news is positively reflected in all the devices that currently use a lithium-ion battery. Newly created lithium-ion batteries are considered by professors to be the holy grail of the industry because they have a much larger capacity, which is one of the major breakthroughs in industry development.
After the lead-acid battery, a nickel-lead battery was introduced, followed by lithium, which improved not only the life of the battery but also its performance. That is, the mileage of the car increased by one charge. In modern electric cars today, it reaches even 500 kilometers and more than the original copies. In serial terms, the average number of serially produced electric vehicles is within 200 kilometers on a single charge of the battery.
According to Harvard University School of Engineering Science, with all the goodies, innovative technology will extend the life of electric vehicles by at least 10-15 years without changing the battery. As for charging time, as of today, this process will take 20 minutes. Finally, most importantly, with the growth of renewable energy sources, a number of changes are taking place in the world, the main result of which will be that we will get much less noise and more fresh air at the expense of electric cars multiplied in cities. In order to shorten this long way, the element considered as Holy Grail will play a decisive role.
And Georgi, before we say goodbye to our viewers and followers, let us return to our starting point, and that's tourism.
Finally, we have the video from Riyadh, more so that we have a very good reason for that opening of a regional headquarters of UNWTO, the idea of which was first aired in Georgia, particularly with the checkpoints and through our platform, and the video clearly shows that.
Yes, I wanted to say that as well, and stress that not only in Georgia, Georgi, but specifically in the checkpoints as well. And we can remember this soundbite as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to host it, to be host?
We host the Middle East office, and thanks to all the member countries of the Council. They anonymously and we have a consensus decision to host the office in Saudi Arabia. We want to support the Middle East countries. It represents a big part of the world space, land, and population and jobs. The Middle East is full of history and heritage and leisure and a lot to offer. Therefore, we want to strengthen the office, and we want to, get the office to help the UNWTO in research, innovation, and training.
Wish you success, and thank you for taking our questions again.
Thank you for having me.
So on to you, Georgi.
The checkpoint is everywhere. Well, this is all for today, and we will be leaving you with a very energetic video. Energy is something we all need in these tough times.
Take care until next Sunday.
See you.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Riyadh and to the first ever UNWTO regional office in the world. In 4 months, this building was nothing. It was just plain land, and today it is this magnificent building that you're standing in today. The regional office will be the best place to unlock that potential to the world.
We all wish to have this region to get its shares of the spend, which is about 10% of the world spend from, where is it today, 5%. Again, I thank you and wish you all the best.
I wish you every success, and moreover, believe that this office will help the Middle East region recover its tourism sector, as well as support the growth of rural tourism development worldwide.
I won't make a long speech. You will just judge. He say good words. I am here today.
For the beautiful, excellent initiative of opening the first office outside Europe.
We would like to congratulate.
Congratulations. Cambodia would like to congratulate.
Thank you and warm wishes from Malaysia.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Welcome to Their Excellencies Mr. Ahmed Al Khatib and Mr. Zurab Polikashvili to inaugurate the building.